Hey, here's a new thing I'm going to try where I show off some comics that I've liked recently. And I will try to link below the video to how to get these comics if they're still available. This is AUTOMA number 14 by Charles Forsman. I received this because I support Forsman on Patreon, and he mails this out to all of his backers. We did an interview with Forsman recently, which I recommend on this channel, where we talk about AUTOMA a bit. But as you can see, this book is very simple mini comic format, but it has all of the beautiful, striking black and white artwork that we know Forsman for. It's beautiful silhouettes and textures. I love these kind of crystallized moments of action that he shows. This is a series that I've really been enjoying. So if you're interested in this, check out his Patreon. This is For Art's Sake by Noah Van Sciver, which is a memoir comic, very similar in format to another one of my favorite Van Sciver comics, My Hot Date, where he's telling this autobio story mostly in little one-page scenes that have punchline moments at the end of them. It's a really funny comic. It tells the story of a friend and roommate who he drifts apart from as he becomes more interested in art and less interested in skateboarding. This is a really thick comic, sort of pushing against the limit of what can be reasonably stapled, but I loved it. This is Unsmooth by E.S. Glenn, which I just read and I want to talk about, but before I do that, I just want to mention that how I came to find E.S. Glenn was via this anthology, Now, published by Fantagraphics. And this is the most recent issue, and it has quite a long story by E.S. Glenn in it called The Gigs. So I don't know anything else about E.S. Glenn, this artist. This was my first exposure to his work, and for me, that's when an anthology is at its best, is when it shows me someone new who I'm impressed by and want to track down everything else they've done. So I got Unsmooth. This is quite a large book. It's like European album sized, I guess. And you can see the European influence perhaps elsewhere. I don't know anything about this cartoonist other than the work, so I may be saying some kind of obvious stupid stuff. But anyway, this is a collection of stories, and they mostly focus on this character who is an artist, but who has a lot of anxiety about art and tends to fall back on a life of crime. He's part of a gang of thieves. I kind of want to go back and immediately reread this and the story from Now, just because of how much there is in them. Like there's such a density of cartooning. Like the characters are all interesting, and each panel kind of reveals something about them. There's a lot of beautiful design and drawing in these. I don't know if this is an earlier story or if it was done at a different size or something like that, but it has kind of thicker line work, whereas some of the later work in here, or further into the book, has finer line work. But it's all that kind of European clear line, brightly colored stuff. There are a lot of drawings of cars, which cartoonists are always complaining about having to draw cars, but this artist definitely does not shy away from it. So anyway, I thought this was a really exciting book to look at, and the characters were intriguing, and I like I said, I want to reread it because I feel like there's a lot in here. It's a lot of subtle humor. And was published by Floating World Comics. And these are some recent reads, though by no means recent comics. And, if you had told me that at this age I would suddenly take an interest in 1970s monster comics, I would have been surprised. But there we are. I don't know if it's like a pandemic thing where just being cooped up I'm interested in looking at something novel or obsessing on something different or something old and comforting. I don't know. But this is Where Creatures Roam #2, which is actually came out in the 70s, but is a collection of even older material. This is a Steve Ditko story that it starts with. These stories are all pretty dumb, but for whatever reason, I'm intrigued by that, like the look of them a lot of times. Like they're all quite, graphically arresting in certain places. Like, for example, in the I Dare Defied the Floating Head story. This is Jack Kirby's The Demon, which I legitimately love. This is the 1970s era Jack Kirby. It has this character, the witch boy, who has a pet cat, which I like. The Living Vampire. Yeah, I can't really explain it, but I guess I lately have been more open to exploring corners of comics history that I'm not as familiar with, where the work doesn't really grab me immediately, and trying to figure out what is interesting and exciting about it. I don't know, it's weird, but that's something I've been reading recently. So those were my recent reads. I hope that there was something of interest to you. My goal is not to just show off my comics collection, but to show some art that maybe people would like to find out more about. So let me know in the comments, though, what you think, and I'll see you next time. Bye.